Thank you, Past President Kelly. When we were talking about different speakers that we can bring into the club and different things that we can do, our world kind of opens up with the power of Zoom and what we've been able to utilize. So I had reached out to the Rotary Club of Maui just to talk about, what could be going on the ground level. We've all heard about the wildfires happening on the island, but those are from news sources and third parties. So we really wanted to hear from a fellow Rotary Club, our brothers and sisters in Rotary, about what was going on. So I'm going to let our speaker, Miss Heather Mueller, no relation to our Katie Mueller. We're going to let her introduce herself, but I just wanted to give you a little bit of notes about history of the Rotary in Maui. While today is about 60, 70 degrees, and we're not really feeling those summer vibes anymore, I hope you feel the aloha vibes after today. So the Rotary Club of Maui was chartered November 4th in 1937. Maui is the second largest island in the Hawaii Islands. It's 48 miles long and 26 miles wide. So it's not very big, but they have 9 Rotary clubs on the island of Maui alone. That Maui Island and those 9 clubs are part of District 5000, and they work together in tandem with our brothers and sisters in Rotary to do good in the world, service above self. And without hesitation, I would like to introduce Miss Heather Mueller. She's a reverend in the island of Maui, and she is the current president of the Rotary Club of Maui.
Well, good morning. Good morning. It's really nice to see a large club functioning. And I have to say that I think your president is wonderful in the way she involves so many people. That's really, really nice. So yes, as Ashley said, my name is Heather Mueller, and I've been a member of the Rotary Club of Maui since 1993, with some breaks in between when I was in Israel for a year, and I belonged to a Rotary Club there. And then I was in Taft, California for 5 years, and I was in a Rotary Club there. So I've had a pretty big Rotary experience. But let me tell you, there is nothing that I have ever experienced like the fire that we have experienced on Maui. So how many of you have been to Hawaii? Raise your hands so I can see. So I'd say that's probably about 1/4 of the group, right? Is that about right?
Yep.
How many of you have been to Maui? Okay. Well, those of you who have been to Maui and those of you who have not been to Maui probably would like to know the geography a little bit. Maui is like a figure 8. It's 2 volcanic masses. And the volcanic mass where I live is on the eastern side, and we call it Haleakala. And the volcanic mass where Lahaina is on the western side, and it's on the western side of the Western Mass, or volcanic mountains. We call them the West Maui Mountains. So the fire, the devastating fire that destroyed Lahaina, was on the further side of the mountain, on the further side of the section of Maui from where I am. But where I live, there were a number of fires. And the reason these fires happened was because there was a hurricane in about 800 miles away from us, south of Hawaii. And just for your information, Hawaii is the body of land furthest away from any other body of land on the earth, which is kind of, I think, an interesting point. This hurricane did not drop a single drop of water, which was really unfortunate, but it created a horrendously stiff wind all over the island. And so what happened was tree branches fell down on power lines. And where those power lines hit the earth, of course, we've had some very dry days, the fires in those locations started. So where I live on my side of the island, there were about 6 different places where fires started. And we lost on my side of the island, the eastern side, the Haleakala side, we lost about, I think it was 25 structures, and another 15 were damaged. So we had damage on our side of the island, but it was nothing compared to Lahaina. As you know, because of the winds, and I'm sure you've all seen photos, because of the winds, Lahaina was pretty much destroyed. So our Rotary Club started immediately supporting a ministry called Cup of Cold Water. Now, the Cup of Cold Water is under the umbrella of the Episcopal Church. And of course, there were lots and lots of ministries and gift giving and clothing and food all around the island. One of the sad ironies is that in crises in the past, the hotels and the restaurants in Lahaina have done so much to help, like with the hurricanes and the tsunami. And this time, of course, those hotels were out of commission, and the road, of course, was very, very irregularly open. So the regular source of support was definitely not happening this time. But what we had, and what my Rotary Club and other Rotary Clubs did, was to support this van. And it's called the Cup of Cold Water. And it's a van that for the last 10 years has been taking needed items, hygiene items and clothing and food, to the unsheltered folks on the island. So the van was stocked and ready. And one of the first trips that it made was to Kapalua, or no, it was Kipahulu. And it went right over to the west side immediately and took needed things, clothes and food and hygiene items. And there was a doctor on board that day, which was wonderful because he could help people renew their prescriptions and do some medical evaluations. So the first thing that our Rotary Club did was to support that ministry, that shall we say, outreach program, which then continued, and it continues on to this day. However, what did happen was a lot of money started to come into this van ministry. And so what we have done is we have enlarged that ministry, and we are now in the second phase. Now, our Rotary Club has received money, and of course, the other Rotary Clubs have received a lot of money, and we're distributing that money now in what I would say, and I would refer to as the second phase. You all know about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, I'm sure, and you know that after physical needs are met, the food and the clothing and the shelter, the next needs are emotional needs and security. So what our Rotary Club is doing, in fact, we have a Zoom meeting this afternoon. We have a doctor in our club who has, for the last 6 years, organized opportunities for people with cancer to get together on a regular basis. It's usually been about every 2 months. She has gatherings for people who are struggling with cancer. And in these days, before the pandemic, they were weekends. And we would provide opportunities for people to be in a resort close to the beach, have massages, get, really wonderful food, have speakers, presenting messages of encouragement, and etc. So this woman, who is a member of our club, she's a medical doctor, has been doing these cancer, it's called cancer wellness days. And so she's been doing this for, like I said, about 6 years. Well, what we are doing now, and we haven't got all the particulars put together, but what we are aiming for is to use her expertise and the expertise of others that she knows about and that we know about to provide opportunities for the fire victims to get together. It will probably be a 6-week unfolding kind of program. The focus, she'll be using her D&O insurance and all of the things that she has going for her, of course. But what we're going to focus on is offering opportunities for people to work through some of their grief and some of the PTSD, the post-traumatic stress, which obviously is, throughout the community right now in various amounts of seriousness. So that's what we are putting together now. The other thing that we have done immediately is obviously the schools in Lahaina. There's one school that's still surviving, but the other schools, there are 3 other schools, elementary schools, have been destroyed. So what the powers that be in the county are trying to do is to get the kids to come by bus to, Central Maui and to enter the schools there. But there, like I said, there's one school in Lahaina that is still functioning. It didn't burn down by some miracle. And it is receiving what we understand is 68 new students. So our club, and I know other clubs are probably, and other agencies are seeking to help that school as they seek to include now these new students. So I think we're going to okay some money for that program this afternoon when we have our Zoom meeting. So the other thing that I wanted to say is that, as Ashley said, I am an Episcopal priest, and the church where I was ordained is completely burned down to the ground. As you well could imagine, in a community of, let's see, I think the final statistic is that there were 3,000 homes burned to the ground, and 200 and something, 240, I think, businesses burned to the ground. So you can multiply and estimate that with the 3,000 homes, if each home had an average of 3 people, or perhaps more, some, as we know, and if the businesses had, say, 5 employees, you can see how major this is in terms of the rest of the island, providing places for these people to live and places for these people to work. Now, a lot of people in these circumstances have left the island, which we feel very, very sad about that. I happen to have a cottage on my property, and it just so happened that my tenants, who had been here for 2.5 years, were leaving. And the male part, the part of the partnership, was going to Oahu to go to college, and the female part of the partnership in my cottage was going down to Kihei because she's a realtor, and that's where most of her business was. Now, housing, as you probably can imagine, was extremely tight and is extremely tight on Maui, and has been for a number of years. And so my cottage was sought out by about 8 people. And I really, really wanted to have somebody who had been a victim of the fire in Lahaina as tenant. And I was successful. So through this couple. It's a husband and a wife and a little baby boy who's 1 year old. I'm very, very happy to say that they're in this cottage, which is a 2-bedroom cottage, and I live up 3,000 feet on the side of Haleakala. So they're very happy to be there. And I am very happy that I was able to welcome a family who had their business, their jobs, and their house destroyed by the fire. The other thing that our club is doing is, now that people are moving to our side of the island, and if they are lucky enough to find a place to live, to move into, obviously they don't have furniture. They don't have, household items. So one of the things that our Rotary Club is doing is helping people furnish. And it's amazing how furniture just materializes. I've already received a table and 4 chairs, and multiple beds. Somebody gave us 100 plates, pots and pans, and the Cup of Cold Water Ministry has received incredible amounts, absolutely boxes and boxes and boxes of clothes. And I gave to my tenants a rice cooker, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You get the idea. It's amazing how these things just are given. So the island is a huge recipient right now of a lot of support. And our Rotary clubs throughout the island are doing right now a lot of work to disseminate some funds that we've gotten from the National Emergency Relief Funds and District 5000, which is, maybe you can see that, District 5000, that's our district, has received a number of quite a few dollars that we have distributed. One of the first distributions that we did was gas cards, and that was District 5000. I think it was $50,000 worth of gas cards, if you can imagine. The next distribution that we received, I think, was $25,000 in the district. This is District 5000. And we haven't done it yet, but we are going to be buying cards for borders, for literacy. As you know, that's one of our important focus points. So the district is doing a lot of things. What my club is doing is, as I have already described, and we hope that it will be able to pull this together. And we have a Zoom this afternoon. We're going to be a little bit more specific about what we need to do and how much money we need and how many resources we're going to have to pull in from other places and other islands possibly. And we need to find a space. We've got to beat on a couple possibilities. And of course, we want to work with the Rotarians in West Maui. There are 3 Rotary clubs in Lahaina. And 2 of them, I think, are up and running now. One of them, I think, is just getting itself organized. I mean, when the whole town burns down, it's really hard to find a place to meet. You know what I mean? So I just wanted to mention one other thing, and that is that the second phase, and then the third phase, and then down the road, the rest of the restoring of Lahaina town are, it's a process that is very, very challenging. One of the things that you probably have heard is that there are some majorly wealthy people who want to come in and make Lahaina into, majorly a tourist destination. And our mayor and our governor are hoping very, very much that the people who own those pieces of property in Lahaina town, in what was Lahaina town, don't sell out to some of these big developers with a lot of money. So this is an issue that we're dealing with now. And you can imagine how these people who have lost everything would feel if they got offered $500,000 for their acre lot. It's going to be difficult for them not to take that money and to then not move to the mainland, if you know what I mean. They might have family on the mainland. They might have friends on the mainland. They might be able to find a job on the mainland. But it's a huge hope on the part of many of us that Lahaina will be able to be restored as a community for people here on Maui. And specifically, we're thinking about the Hawaiian people, of course, and the Filipino people, and the Micronesian people, and the Caucasian people, of course. One of the things I think that it's important for us to realize at this point in my presentation is that Lahaina, until 1852, was the capital of Hawaii. And that means that there were many extremely important historical sites in Lahaina. For example, there was a place called Wohing. And those of you who have been to Lahaina, I'm sure would remember the Chinese temple on Front Street, which of course now is burned down. And then there were other historic places. There was the Baldwin House. Baldwin was one of the first missionaries. Many of you know that the missionaries came to Hawaii in 1820. And if any of you have read Michener's book, Hawaii, you know that the missionaries came and they established schools, and they established churches, of course, and they did a lot of teaching. In fact, here's a little known fact that Hawaii was the most literate part of the United States and possibly the world in the mid 1850s and 60s. Isn't that interesting? The most literate, the largest percentage of people who knew how to read and write in Hawaii. And it was because the missionaries had as one of their major goals to learn Hawaiian and to be able to teach English to the local residents. And so Lahaina Luna High School was formed. It is the oldest high school, I believe, still west of the Mississippi River. Lahaina Luna had a printing press and still does. And so Lahaina, and by the way, Lahaina Luna School is still standing. Praise God. Many other things are not standing. The Baldwin House, which is, of course, where that missionary who was in Lahaina lived, and he built that house for his family. He had lots of children. I think he had 8 children. There are Baldwins all over the island of Maui even today. Then we had the courthouse, and you probably, if you've been there, or maybe if you've heard about the banyan tree. The banyan tree was put there, I think it was 1873. So it's well over 100 years old. And of course it covered, I think it was, I don't know, several acres. And a lot of people are working on trying to keep it alive. They're loosening the soil around the roots. They're putting fertilizer in it, and they're watering it regularly. And we're hoping that the banyan tree will live. But next to the banyan tree was the courthouse. And the courthouse had a very full and complete collection of Hawaiian memorabilia, old artifacts from when Lahaina was the capital of Hawaii, and other things. Like, for example, one of the flags that was still flying when Hawaii then became a part of the United States. So there were artifacts, of course. It's such a heartbreak that these artifacts now have all been destroyed. And then of course the church, like I told you, where I was ordained, was called Holy Innocents. And it was a church given to the Episcopal Church by Queen Emma. Queen Emma and King Kamehameha IV were the ali'i, that's the Hawaiian word for royalty. They were the king and queen present in 1862 when the Anglican Church came to Hawaii. The missionaries were congregational. And I heard somebody announce that they were Presbyterian. And another interesting little fact is that in Hawaii, you don't find any on Maui, you find no Presbyterian churches. And I think on Oahu, I think maybe there are two. They're probably recent. And the reason is that in 1816, I think it was, in Williamstown, Massachusetts, and then Boston, the Presbyterians and the Congregationalists divided the world, and Hawaii got congregational. So we have a lot of congregational churches, and those were the missionaries who came to Hawaii starting in 1820 and throughout the 1800s. But the Anglican Church was established in 1862, and Queen Emma, after the death of King Kamehameha IV, gave to the island of Maui 2 pieces of property. One is in Wailuku, and that's Good Shepherd Church. And then the other one was in Lahaina, which was Holy Innocents Church, which, as I said already, is where I was ordained. So Holy Innocents Church is, of course, very old. It had beautiful paintings. It had so much history involved with it. And of course, it is now a pile of ash. So these historical locations. Oh, and then I should tell you about Moku'ula, which is where the ali'i, the kings and queens, lived in Hawaii, surrounded by a fish pond. And in the mid 1800s, or I think it was early 1900s, that fish pond was filled in, and a tennis court was built there, and I think there's a parking lot. There have been archaeologists who have tried recently to make a dig there. They think that maybe even one of the queens was buried there, but the dig is not completed. The pandemic came, the dig was discontinued. But what I'm saying is that at some point in time, we are going to start rebuilding Maui. I mean, Lahaina. Oops. Lexi, I'm on Zoom. And we're going to need money, of course, and we're going to need a plan. And so I'm hoping that possibly, I know that our foundations for Rotary don't necessarily include historic locations, but I'm hoping that somehow, with maybe Habitat for Humanity and Rotary, maybe taking the literacy part of something like that, could in some way help to rebuild some of the buildings in Lahaina, some of the historic. We don't build buildings, but we can provide, materials for the schools, or possibly some of the memorabilia that has been lost. So let's see. I think maybe, Ashley, would you like to entertain some questions?
Yeah, we'll have our secretary go around and ask questions. We'll leave the camera kind of in the room so that you can kind of see what's going on. I just wanted to give a little bit of an update because again, we love hearing from, boots on the ground, neighbors who are experiencing this in real time, because we get fed the mainstream media. So from that, I know as of September 14th, the search for people on land has ended. They've got at least 115 deceased with 388 missing, but they are continuing the search for people in the sea. When it was a fire, people were jumping in the ocean, swimming pools, things like that. So there's still a lot of work to be done, and we appreciate you giving us that update. And now we will go around and ask questions. If you could please use the microphone so everybody could hear.
So thank you so much for being with us today and talking about your situation. Without pointing,
Welcome.
without pointing fingers, what can we learn from this? What went wrong? And what can we learn from it? And what can we do different in the future? Thank you.
Oh, that is a wonderful question. And first of all, we need in not just Lahaina, but all over Maui, we need to put the utilities below the ground, and especially the electric wires. And I do believe that that is definitely going to happen. The other thing we probably need to learn is, see, one of the things that people don't realize is that Maui, you know, Honolulu has been a destination for visitors for many years. Maui is a fairly new location for a lot of money which has come. Hawaii was the engine for Hawaii was sugar for many, many decades. Sugar is no longer being produced here or grown. And so what is happening now is tourism is the engine for money in Maui, especially. And so what we need to learn is that we need to update our infrastructure, our systems. Like part of the problem with Lahaina was the road was closed. And the reason was that the tree branches had fallen down and rocks were, because of the wind, had covered the road. And that meant that it was very difficult for people to leave. We need to do a better job anticipating this kind of a disaster.
Thank you.
We've heard some conflicting things about, you know, you just said tourism was your biggest moneymaker, and then they were telling people not to go. Are you seeing a lot of tourists still flying to the island, or are you see that that's kind of waiting and the hotels are being used up by the residents?
Well, yes, we were very, very interested in not having a lot of people initially. And now it's a divided message. I mean, there's no doubt about it. But when I flew to California a couple of weeks ago because my nephew died and I had to go back and be with my sister and whatever, when I came back on the plane, it was about 1/3 filled. So yes, there is a big decrease. When I drove home yesterday, I saw many, many, many rental cars parked near the airport. So yes, the numbers have severely declined. And yes, the hotels, especially in Lahaina, are housing, I think it's over 1,000 people in their hotel rooms. So, however, the rest of the island is here. And by the way, I have a guest house also. And so I would like to offer to your club, if you'd like to auction this a week in this guest house, you are very welcome to do that. And I would invite you to come. You'd have to call me, of course, we could set up a time. But Ashley, if you want pictures of it, or if you want pictures of the location where the guest house is, I would be very happy to send that to you. But you know, if someone wants to come, we are here, and the rest of the island is open. The waves are lapping up on the shore, and the sun is shining, and we've got a number of other historic locations that would be very interesting to visit.
Mark, do you have a question online?
We do, Heather. We have a question from Jen Berwitz. Might be picking me up there. What is the best way to help monetarily, and should we donate to Cup of Water or to Rotary?
I think that right now, Cup of Cold Water has received a lot of funds. In fact, I personally have probably brought in over $50,000 for that, and they've received funds from the diocese. I think the best thing to do at this point in time is to either donate to our club, which I have described, you know, how we would go forward to use it, or donate to District 5000. And of course, I'd love it if you could donate to the Rotary Club of Maui. if that is what you would like to do, I'm sure that we will put it to very, very good use, and we would appreciate it very much. Because what we have in mind is going on the second phase of Maslow's hierarchy of needs and doing, as I described, this program for people experiencing, and then there are other things too, but this program that we have sort of laid out now, and we want to instrumentalize for people with grieving and PTSD.
I've got a good friend who lives in Oahu, and during COVID, she had talked about how, some of the problems that they had was they were limited to what supplies came to the island, whereas, if we needed supplies, we could go to the next town. I know donating money is helpful, but are you having trouble getting supplies at this point to help with the problem?
Actually, no. The food, the clothing, the household supplies have been coming in containers, even school supply. I think we got on Maui a container of school supplies from, I think, people in California. So the supply issue is not as much as the money.
Thank you so much for your time today and sharing. My question is about the government. Have you heard what our government is going to do to help residents with?
Well, we have a governor, Josh Green, who has been for months talking about the need of housing. And one of the things that he has done, he and others in the legislature, have made the permitting rules much easier and much more, I would say, sensible. And so on Oahu, they had already started designating some spaces, some land for housing that would be built more rapidly than has historically been true. And this is also true on Maui. And I heard, in fact, just the other day about a housing plan for little houses that is being put together at this point. And so we're not at the point of rebuilding Maui, Lahaina yet. We're not at that point, but we are at the point of designating some land and starting to build some of these smaller houses immediately. And that's happening. And how they're going to rebuild Lahaina, I don't think we know yet. And I think the danger, as I've already said, is that somebody with a lot of money is going to come in and buy up all that property. And we really, truly, I personally, truly do not want to see that happen. I want Lahaina to be the community consisting of the people that want to be there and have been there in the past.
Thank you, Heather.
Thank you so
Thank
much,
you.
Heather, for sharing with us today. And we know that the communities are in good hands with Rotarians. And anything that we can do, we will talk more about this guest house proposition and then any other donations. Do you have a website or anything that we can direct funds to, or would that be something that we would like? How would we do that the easiest way financially? Hold on one second, you're muted.
Okay, there
ahead.
we go. I think that what would be best is if you, of course you can donate it to wherever you want, but I will personally guarantee, and you know me, and of course, one of the big dangers that we've had and that Maui has is when you got these big bucks happening, you've got scammers that arrive. Mm-hmm. And so if you send it directly to our club, I can personally promise that it's going to be used in the proper way. Now, I do believe that the District 5000 is trustworthy, and I know that they've received thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. But if you send it to us, I can tell you what we're going to use it for. We're going to help students that are now in the school in Lahaina. That's going to be immediate. And then we're going to build this program that I was describing. So if you want to know exactly where your money would go and how it's going to be used, send it to us. If you want to send it to the district, I also believe it would be well used. So there's my answer.
Perfect. Thank you so much.